If you went 20 years ago and talked about VOCs and, some of the things that, off gassing, I mean, most builders wouldn't even know what you're talking about. Now we talk about it all the time. And it's one of the questions that we ask our homeowners, are they sensitive to, different products? Do they have any allergies? Do they have any respiratory, issues? And, because we're in our homes and, in our climate, we're having HRVs and ERVs, which is cycling out our air repeatedly. Our homes are much fresher. They're much better to breathe in than they were of yesteryear. Welcome to Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today's question for our Thursday Q&A is, how has the adoption of new technologies changed the way you design, construct, and market luxury homes? It's a big question. I think the beginning is just that I think our industry is always changing. I think it always has been. And I think, like any business, if you're not evolving, if you're not changing, I mean, you're dying. I mean, you've got to grow. And, I look back at, how we designed homes 20 years ago when I started compared to what we do now. I mean, we used to be able to build a house in 120 days. Now it takes me 9 to 12 months to build a house. Now, granted, the homes are much more complicated, but that kind of goes into all of this. And I think, for me specifically, I've kind of gone where my clients have wanted me to go. We always built high quality homes, and so, always compared to our competition, we were just, our millwork was better, our details were better, our obsession with perfection was better. And that sort of just set us apart. The reputation sort of was that if you want really high quality, that we could do that. And I think as you start working with higher end architects, higher end designers, and your name gets out there, you evolve. And I think in terms of technology, I guess maybe we'll start first with design. I mean, think of how much design has changed just in the last couple of years. We used to have, and not that you still can't do hand sketching, but the 3D modeling, which used to be a very expensive add-on, is pretty much, if you don't do 3D modeling, you're kind of a dinosaur. And you can farm it out. You don't have to do it individually. And I know plenty of architects or, interior designers that will, send it out to overseas. I mean, we work with people anywhere from, Ukraine, Serbia. I've done some with India, some in South America, where, maybe we have a rendering that we want done of the great room or the kitchen, and we really want the rendering to be top notch. And usually it's for a publication or, like I said, entry in a magazine for like an artisan home tour or parade tour. You can give whoever you're working with a lot of the details, the material selections, things like that. And then they'll make it, that imagery will just be incredibly powerful. It almost, sometimes it's gotten so good now, you have to look at the photo twice. Like, wait, is that home already built or is that a to be built? And so now, because people are so good at it, how people used to design it, you've got to have full color, maybe some 3D, whatever you've got going on. And it's really, really impressive. I think in terms of design, I think architecture design, we had an architect on that was just talking about how much AI is likely to change how they design as well. I mean, I think you'll still have architects and home designers that will have the final say, like anything. And I think AI will just simply be a tool. But it'd be really interesting. I don't know if the technology is available yet where, you could tell AI that, hey, you want a 4-bedroom house, you want it to be traditional. It'd be really cool if you could have like, hey, here's 4 other homes that I really like that are the spirit of what I'm going for, create something new with some of these guiding principles. It'd be interesting to see how long before architectural design will be able to sort of morph that. I think there's some programs out there. I just don't know if it's only from an imagery standpoint or if you can actually design that way. From a construction standpoint, we're always evolving. I think the materials we use, continues to evolve. I mean, back when, in our understanding, obviously home performance and energy performance is a hot field and it's constantly changing. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, you'd see homes before I was building, but you'd put fiberglass on concrete walls and then you put poly over it because you thought that was a good idea. Well, all those walls sweat like greenhouses, create mold, and you got to rip them all out. And so, then they get away with that technology and say, no, that doesn't work. And so one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of times in construction, we might be slow to adopt is we've seen a lot of things that we try and then fail. But I think that's part of innovation. That's part of figuring it out. I think you have to make sure you use your common sense factor too. Like if something just simply doesn't make sense, don't do it just because maybe the crowd is doing it or it's some bright, new, shiny, technology. I mean, look into it, make sure, sometimes, a foundational principle is probably a better one, but can you do it with a new technology?
Lake Society magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
Only because I do a lot of stuff with Pella, and we post a lot of it on our Instagram, but they have the Steady Set Go system that they were 4 years in innovating. And at the International Builder Show this year, they had a traditional window, and I think it was 3 times faster with their new system versus the old system. And it was really install system that was geared towards those that would install their windows. So framers in our market, actually Pella does their own install, which is great. But what's cool about it is they have these clips on the inside of the window. And, a big part of installing windows is A, getting the flashing right, B, making sure it's leveled. And a lot of the bigger windows, it's 2, 3, 4-person install job. These windows are pretty heavy. And on smaller windows, you need someone on the outside on a ladder, or any window actually. You need someone on the outside on a ladder or a lift, and need someone on the inside kind of leveling it and, nailing it in. And then you've got your nailing flange on the outside. Well, this innovation, check out the video on our Instagram feed if you haven't seen it yet, or head to Pella.com. But it's really neat. So these clips basically extend from the inside. If it's a small window, let's call it 3 feet wide by 4 feet tall, you can just install it yourself, one person from the inside of the house. It cuts ladder work down to just hardly anything. It's pretty impressive. So you can bring it into the house where you've got obviously a much safer environment. You're not sitting up on a ladder with something heavy and risk of falling. And, you put the window in, and it's got these clips, a couple screws, and it actually screws to the inside of your 2x4 framing, which is incredible. The other thing that's amazing about it is now you have a really clear gap all the way around. You can still shim it and make sure it's level, but you don't need as many as you would on a traditional window, which is great for insulation. So if you spray foam around the inside of your window, or if you chink it with insulation, you have a much better gap, which is going to get you a lot better air sealing. I think every framer has probably seen it, or builder has seen it, where there's not enough of a gap between the window and the 2x4, and you can hardly really get any insulation in there. And so your thermal break just is not that great. And then on the outside of the window, you don't even have a nailing flange. It's got these little clips that you pull off, and it just flaps to the outside of your sheeting, and then you tape over it, and you're done. No nails. What's going to be sort of revolutionary in our market? We're in climate zone, I think 6 and 7. It's a lot colder up here in Minnesota, but we're starting to do a lot more external insulation. I use a Zip R6, which is a insulated to an R value of 6 to the outside. The foam is actually in the 4x8 sheet. And now, let's say you did rock wool or something. We saw a home out at 45 White Oak out in Boston, where I think Nick Schiffer from NS Builders was putting on 6 inches of rock wool insulation to the outside. So we're getting that insulation barrier to the outside. Well, a lot of times you have to buck out the windows, and you still have to be thoughtful about your details. But going back to this innovation, you've got this flap on your window that can go right over your sheeting, and it makes your flashing and your water planes just a lot easier. And, anytime you can make something a little simpler to understand and less moving parts to mess up, obviously the end result is going to be a lot better. This episode is brought to you by Alpine Hardwood Flooring. They've been our partner now for over a decade, installing all our wood floors on all our new homes as well as our remodels. And on a personal level, Adam and Anthony Jankala, the owners, are just absolutely amazing people. They've been so supportive of my career as well as doing anything we need to make sure that our clients are happy. And they work so well with our other vendors and trade partners at not only protecting their product, but also ensuring everyone else's looks great. So if you're looking for a wood floor or for a refinish, I highly recommend Alpine Hardwood Flooring. I think, insulation has come a long way too in terms of innovation. I mean, obviously spray foam's been around for a while, but, and I'm personally not a big fan of spray foaming everything because I think just like anything, there are certain tools that are better than other tools. And, for us, I like spray foaming for air barriers, for kind of those really difficult places to insulate. And so we do a lot of combination of, spray foam and bat insulation, blown insulation, things like that. But I really like what we're seeing in the industry with external insulation. It just makes sense. So I think that's a huge change in terms of some new technologies and really just understanding. I mean, between our continuing education classes that we have to take as builders to keep our license current, we're constantly being inundated with these new technologies. And I think our climate has a lot to do with it. I had heard recently that, Minnesota, props to Minnesota, but I think we build, or I know, we build the most homes at scale of high efficiency. And I mean, the reason we have to is our climate is a lot colder. And so a lot of our building codes are more advanced than the rest of the country. That's not to say that other parts of the country don't build really good homes. It's just that a lot of the innovation comes from, Canada and from, our climate zone across the country, Washington, the Dakotas, East Coast. We're getting wild changes in temperature. I was talking to an energy consultant recently, and he was down in Arizona. He's like, yeah, it gets to be 120 degrees. And, let's say you cool your house to, let's say 70. And so, that's a 50 degree, I think you call it a T delta in temperature. But Minnesota, in the wintertime, you might keep your house at 70 degrees and it's negative. Let's just call it zero. That's 70 degrees. So that's 20 degrees more extreme. And then obviously in our climate, we've got a ton of humidity. With our summer humidity, I know Texas got crazy humidity as well as all other parts, but we're obviously seeing huge climate shift across the country, across the world. And so I think we are going to have to continue to keep on innovating, making our systems better, making our homes more efficient. And, we had Jonathan Kramer on, I don't know, 10 episodes ago from Eversphere. And he had just a kind of a shocking stat that we spend 90% of our lives indoors. So what we breathe is super, super important. If you went 20 years ago and talked about VOCs and, some of the things that, off gassing, I mean, most builders wouldn't even know what you're talking about. Now we talk about it all the time. And it's one of the questions that we ask our homeowners, are they sensitive to, different products? Do they have any allergies? Do they have any respiratory, issues? And, because we're in our homes and, in our climate, we're having HRVs and ERVs, which is cycling out our air repeatedly. Our homes are much fresher. They're much better to breathe in than they were of yesteryear. So that's some definitely innovations and new technologies that we're seeing. I think the best way to stay abreast of all this stuff is asking your trade partners. I'm not an HVAC expert. So, I'm asking my HVAC team, what are some emerging technologies or what are you seeing that we could, what can we tell our clients about, if they're interested in more purified air? We had one client during COVID that he was extremely at risk for any sort of respiratory illness, obviously COVID. He used to wear double masks everywhere. And we actually installed, it was the first one I've ever done, but it was a UV light on top of a HEPA filter in his house. And the UV light, I think, killed like 99% of bacteria. And it was just, obviously a UV light that was, set in a different chamber of the furnace. So as air was filtering through, that UV light was obviously hitting all the air movement and killing whatever sort of particles that was there. But that was really because the homeowner asked for it. He wanted to know, like, hey, I care about my life. I want to stay alive. This is definitely a life and death kind of situation. And so we had to take some steps that we normally wouldn't take. And so sometimes now we'll pitch this to clients with small kids, people that are more health conscious. They're looking to us as guides, saying, what's out there, what do we know that we might want. And sometimes clients don't want to do it, but our job is just simply to educate them. This episode is brought to you by Helmuth & Johnson. a top Minnesota law firm representing clients ranging from individuals to emerging startups and multinational Fortune 500 companies. Focusing on transactional law, litigation, and appeals, Helmuth and Johnson attorneys are leaders in their field. David Helmuth and Chad Johnson joined forces 30 years ago in 1994 with the goal of creating a premier law firm capable of handling complex and challenging cases efficiently and effectively. Today, Helmuth and Johnson rank among the top 15 largest law firms in Minnesota with more than 70 Twin City lawyers serving clients in more than 30 legal practice areas. They offer a full suite of legal services to clients without sacrificing their original commitment to providing responsive and affordable legal representation. To learn more, head to our website, thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com, or to their website at www.hjlawfirm.com. So I think in terms of marketing, we've seen a huge shift in technologies. Obviously, AI is probably at the forefront of that. If you're not using, Chat GPT or Jasper or something, to help you write, your newsletters and blogs and, just to get started. A lot of people, their number one barrier to entry to starting something is just some sort of an outline or just like getting off go. And, what's kind of cool about it is that, and I'm pretty slow to it myself, but just, I know like my blogging team, I'll give them a lot of, I'll just record myself talking about a particular topic. Then I send it to them. I believe they transcribe it. We use a program called Otter. And so it'll take notes, it'll summarize. In fact, every Zoom meeting that I have, and now I'm using it every time I have a client meeting, I just turn on the note taker on my phone, leave it on the center of the table, and it'll record the entire conversation. And then it'll send us an email after with the highlights, the summary, the calls to action. It's very professional. And so it's a great way for the whole team to stay accountable, but it's also a great way to let your clients know that, you're picking up the details. And also, it's a really great way to make sure that you never have any sort of he said, she said types of situations. I've had situations in the past where, I had a client say, well, this is what you actually said. It would be nice to actually have a record of what we actually said. Obviously, as the world gets more and more litigious, things like that, having a record of what was shared and what was conveyed could keep you out of a lawsuit. And so there's a number of reasons why this would be helpful. That's probably lower on the list because, none of us are trying to get sued, and we're all, I would assume, trying to do good work. So it's really just about doing better work, but you can do more than one thing at one time with these technologies. In terms of marketing, I think of like what Morgan Mahler and Katie Kath do here in our market. They have phenomenal blogs that they're doing, and their whole goal is to get people to their website, capture their emails. They have a bunch of brand deals that they're doing. And so the bigger their audience and the bigger their following, the more clout that they have in the industry. But on top of that, there's a lot of people that just want information. The home sphere is so big in terms of, people buying things, what people want. And so I think what's really nice about what ChatGPT or other programs like that can do is you could say, I want to write an article. What are the top 10, trending, home designs, or what are the top 10? I don't know why we are fascinated with top 10, but, what are the top 10 kitchen innovations? And it'll spit it right out for you. And then you could basically rewrite it. That's the outline, but you could rewrite the article based on, what your little nuance is. It could be also, it helps with creating SOPs. We actually just we're looking to hire someone, not immediately, but within the next 6 months. And so I just wrote into ChatGPT what was the criteria, what we were looking for, and then it wrote a job description, which was way better. And it was 99% accurate. So you edit a few small things, and then boom, that's what you send to your your potential applicant pool. And now they actually know what they're interviewing for. Especially for small companies, I think this is going to be a game changer because it allows you to out punch your weight. If you have this kind of availability to, I think the biggest problem us small businesses have, and myself included, I'm a business of 4 or 5 people. It's the mundane stuff. It's a lot of the paperwork. It's a lot of the writing, and it still needs, I think the biggest concern that most of us have would be that it lacks our voice. It lacks our, who we are. But one thing that's sort of interesting, I've just played around with a little bit, but like Jasper AI, you can actually set different profiles or different personalities. So let's just say, obviously the Curious Builder is what you're listening to right now, but I could have Jasper learn my Curious Builder nature. And so maybe it has certain nuances, certain playfulness or whatever. And that's kind of the way it writes. And let's say Mark Williams Custom Homes, well, I'm obviously the same person, maybe it's a little bit more professional, a little bit more buttoned up. Not sure that's the case, but let's just say, and I could actually create a profile that Jasper would follow for that to be a little bit more professional, a little bit more dialed up. And so that the nuance of the voicing will be more in line with what your brand strategy is. And so I think that's really cool. I know Morgan Molitor uses that a lot for her different companies and how she tries to, differentiate between the two. Back to this question, what are the new technologies and innovations? Pretty much every year I go out to the International Builder Show. A big part of it is relationships and brand building and seeing, meeting representatives from different companies around the country, around the world. A lot of it is meeting other builders, talking to them. But, I love going and seeing some of the new technologies that are being developed. I mean, you're going to see it probably first at the International Builder Show, for the very reason that the exposure is so large. And, a lot of times you can't get what they're showing you, but within a year or two, they're hitting the floor. And so if you want to stay, up on what's coming out, I'd highly recommend going to the Builder Show if you've never been before. I mean, it's a little overwhelming in terms of like the amount of square footage in Vegas. It's enormous. I don't even know the stats on the number of people that are going and the number of exhibits, but it's mind blowing. In 3-4 days, you can never see it all. My best advice is, bring a couple of bottles of water and really comfy shoes, and set your expectations that you're not going to see everything, and just, go out and explore and, bring some of your team members with you. I think it's a great opportunity for some team building, and, bring your PM, bring some of your designers with you, because you're going to learn so much. And a lot of it is the world gets smaller and smaller, especially with social media. You're going to meet so many brands. I've met a number of people that I work with now, weekly, and I've met them at the Builder Show. And, the brands that we work with, we put them in our homes. And a lot of that relationship starts with their key people who you meet at the Builder Show. And so, they're investing a lot of time and money to be there, and you're investing a lot of time, probably more so than money, to visit. And so, you're both putting a lot of time in there. And the goal is that you can help each other long term. So I think it's very valuable. So anyway, that was my answer to how has the adoption of new technologies changed the way you design, construct, and market luxury homes. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.